What is it about information technology that, anybody, but especially people in power, don't understand? I'm probably going to focus a little different than, most of the technology companies that you'd talk to, because I think one of the most important things that we need to understand about information technology itself is the people that drive information technology. Today, all the good technology is at home. I mean, yeah, there's really cool stuff. I might have a good computer here, or there might be other things, but all the innovation is really happening outside of the walls of IT. I think the bigger issue is that you've got a whole new generation of people who were raised with that technology. This wasn't I learned about it late in high school or in college and moved forward. This was I was born and raised with technology in my hands. And they see the rejection of new technology or latest generation technology in an IT environment as an affront to their own, to their personal well-being. So effectively, what we're doing is we're saying, well, we like technology, but we really want to, slow the pace of how this is getting into our organization. What your workers that you're hiring today, these kids out of college, going all the way up to their, early 30s, what they're hearing is, well, gee, I can't do anything fun here. I thought this would be a fun place to work. It's much more fun for me to be at home. What I should do is I should go home and I should innovate. So you've got your lead workers, the people that are actually on the ground doing all the hard work, trying to understand how to best manipulate the environment, and all their passion is dedicated toward going home as opposed to working for you. That's a really scary concept. Those of us, on the top looking down, it used to be you didn't share information with your classmates or your friends. I think the word for it back then was called cheating. I spend a lot of time with high school students trying to encourage them to get into technology because I'm just afraid of technology and the dearth of technology interest in the U.S. But when I look at those high school students, I see everything done collaboratively, socially. They're all working together in groups. Get a bunch of kids together for a robotics challenge and just watch the really cool things that happen. I mean, it's astounding to watch, and anybody watching the video, I dare you to go actually out to a local high school and see some of the technology classes and see what kids are doing. Because you'll see the way they operate, one, and you'll also see how that really accomplishes a global task. We all talk about teamwork inside of the corporate walls, but realistically, when we came in, we were all given our individual projects, and then you would kind of roll them up into a team task and achieve success. Everything is done collaboratively now. There's handoffs in the middle, process handoffs that would make normal people shudder inside the corporate walls are just natural ways of doing business in a social networked environment, like a high school or even a university today. And that's the workforce that is coming in that's really going to go change the way that IT innovates. And again, it's not that we need to change their habits. We need to recognize that they're doing the right thing, and we need to change our habits as a result. If you look at especially the younger generation, the Gen Z that we're probably going to be hiring in a few years, you look at the characteristics of them, and honestly what they tell you, and admittedly youth and enthusiasm play into this, but honestly you look at Gen Z and what they tell you is, I would rather make a difference than make money. That's a really strong motivational factor that you have to understand and that you have to harness. Because it's one thing to say, well, I'm going to reward you for doing well, and then hear back, but I'm not staying until 6 o'clock because I need to get home for my environment meeting. We really need to understand that, cultures act differently, but, cultures change over time, and we need to embrace that change one way or the other. Realistically, when I see just the whole cry for social responsibility coming in, and when I see that pressure coming from the outside, realistically, it's good business to respond to any external pressure. Just, you need to respond to the environment if you want the environment to respond favorably back to you. So I think there just is the aspect of, well, we need to understand ways to save energy or to be more green. At the same time, we need to understand how to go channel that energy and enthusiasm into doing the right thing. Like I said, cost might not equal total cost. So there's the whole aspect of, I feel really good by turning off all the lights in the building, but if I've actually got somebody that wants to stay beyond and work, what message am I sending to them? Oh, it must be time to go home. Is the value of saving lights in one portion of a building worth the value of losing that hour or two of true innovative time that you had because somebody wanted to stay behind and solve a problem? That's a really simple example, but actually if I just look at the social responsibility is really going to focus on the passion that is going to come out of it. So if I've got passion on saving energy, if I've got passion on being more green, how do I then, as a manager of an organization, turn that into something that's positive for the organization? Again, more simple examples. The way for an organization to save money is to go paperless. I think that's fairly easily. I think that's a fairly easy assumption. If you say, as an organization, I want to go paperless, and you turn that into because it's socially responsible for me to be able to not only recycle, but to not use that paper in the first place, think of the innovative passion that you're going to inspire in that socially responsible generation, who's going to come in and probably work overtime trying to go create a paperless system because that's the right thing to do. That's what passion is all about. Let's actually go understand how we go out and we reach to the heart of what people believe and what people want to believe. And let's go find a way to actually turn that into a way that makes the company more efficient, more lean, better, more responsible. I want to hit on the specific example, and then I'm going to give a more generic answer. And I think of something like Twitter, especially because that was one of the first prime examples that I saw of hey, this is a technology outside, and we just don't understand how to use it inside the walls of IT. You go into any large IT environment, and there's always the messages of hey, this particular network server is down, this particular email server needs maintenance. Let me give you this update. That's a natural space for Twitter. Not necessarily because it's any better than the messages that you can give across a network, but because it inspires people to action more. If I'm going to get that message and I'm going to get it on my PC because okay, well, here's just my standard list of outages that are rolling down, that's one thing. But if I'm in the lunchroom and my cell phone buzzes and it's hey, this server's down, that's action to me as a younger employee, because again, it's the tool has conditioned me to action on the outside. I'm actually just taking advantage of that habit on the inside, and by changing the way that I disperse information, I'm changing the way that people work and the passion that they have for work. So that's a specific instance that I think about. Now, when I look just more generically, a lot of those tools can be invented inside the enterprise as much as they are outside the enterprise, if you encourage those tools to be invented. Realistically, it just comes down to everybody's got a really good idea, but all the good ideas inside the walls of the corporation are inside the walls of the box. And what we're doing is we're trying to get everybody to think along one standard way. And honestly, in a global environment, we've already figured out that doesn't work. There's different cultures, the people are trained differently. But just look now, even at the local portion of something like a U.S. or a first world economy, and you're seeing a huge sea change in the way that again, your young workforce is wired, and we're going to have to let them follow their paths, not force them to follow our paths. Because again, when you do that, you're instilling the passion. You're actually encouraging them to work the way they want, but also to innovate because they're working the way that they want. You're not setting up barriers, you're breaking them down in every instance. Effectively, the way that the younger workforce was educated, the way that they were trained, and the way they want to come into the workforce is working naturally in a collaborative fashion. And they're doing it in ways that those of us who really were trained along the individual lines just don't understand. But we do understand the results of that, and by encouraging that collaboration rather than trying to force people back through the exact same paths that we learned to become IT professionals or to become management professionals, if we can manage to actually adapt to their path rather than having them adapt to our path, we're going to get results much greater, much faster, with a tremendous amount more passion than we would have gotten otherwise. Let me hit another aspect of the workforce, and then I think I've got one or two others as well. But if I really look at the workforce today, we've talked a little bit about the growth of the first world workforce and the slight change in the personality and the social collaboration around that. I think the other piece of that is, of course, there's a much larger workforce that is growing up, and we've traditionally taken advantage of that through something like outsourcing, outsourcing of IT to a developing nation, and we've taken advantage of the fact that those nations are training their employees to really be able to respond in an outsourced fashion. So culturally, we're seeing a slightly different set of education and set of collaboration techniques that are happening. I think realistically, though, the company is still going global. And more interestingly, the arbitrage that we used to see between the salaries is definitely equalizing. So your developing workforce really isn't the cost savings that you thought it was. And in fact, that was probably on all of our parts a relatively short-sighted approach of, well, let's go see if we can save money over here. In the end, it cost us money because we tried to adapt a different culture to something that we already could have done. It may or may not have worked to varying degrees of success, and now what we've got to do is reestablish the competencies that we lost by outsourcing in the first place. What we've missed in all of that is the wonder of the multiple cultures. I view it less as outsourcing of a specific job to a specific culture. I see it more of localizing for cultural excellence. So we are all a global workforce now, or at least a lot of the businesses. What we need to do is we need to actually localize for the competencies that we're seeing across those various cultures. If I've got a good base of innovation, in a certain area, I want to drive my innovation there. And I don't want to go try and outsource that team. I want to go try and focus that team. If I've got the ability to follow a strong process elsewhere in my company, I want to go put a lot of my process skills there, and I want them to go ensure that that process runs smoothly. I probably am not going to go ask them to innovate that process, because that's not the competency that they're good for. But I can take that process and I can put it in an innovative team. I'm going to get a very different process out of it, one that might be better than I'm going to be able to then globalize across the globe. And so as I look at that, I really see a localization of competency becoming the new globalization for IT. And that's something that we're really going to need to understand as we truly start to look at the competencies that we've established by putting teams all over the world in these large companies. The value of data is that you can look at it. I mean, the general value that I see most IT organizations place on data is I can effectively store it and I can recall it when I need it. And I see so much focusing on enterprise storage and being able to make sure that my repository is safe. What about the whole mining aspect of it? I remember commenting years ago that Sarbanes-Oxley, as much of a burden it was on any corporate infrastructure, was also this huge opportunity because it gave you the ability to have all your financial data in a format, in a place that everyone knew about, and that was just ripe for mining. That's an opportunity to look, and it's not necessarily that we need to go assign someone to go look at the data and come back and give us results, because I guarantee you we're going to get very predictable results. Whatever you assign the person to do, they're going to come back with the result that you want. And that's an error that I see a lot in the upper levels of a company, is focusing people on tell me what I already know. Instead, I think what you say is the data is there, it's available, with certain protections, obviously. I can make that data available. Again, I have to create a habitual change in my management organization to then say, I'm willing to let people look at that data, come to conclusions about that data, and tell me what their conclusions are. And I have to do it in such a way that even when I don't want to hear that conclusion, I can still encourage them to continue to go look until they can come back and give me answers that are really going to change the way my company operates. But it's having the data available in the first place and letting people actually go, look at that, that's going to create the success. It's this huge pace of change of technology that's going to force us all onto, a wave that we're going to have to surf. And, occasionally we're going to have to fall in and not drown. And that's really where, where it comes back to the data of, well, okay, if I've got all this around me, how do I really make sure that I can understand as much of it as possible? I'll never understand all of it. And all the methodologies I put into trying to understand this particular piece are going to be useless a year or two later as I go 2 to 3 orders of magnitude of the amount of data that I've got to then parse. So It's not only being willing to go look at the data and being willing to adapt to the data, but really being able to adapt your methodologies for looking at it as well. Again, let people look at it and they'll find that path.